Today's subject is selections. This is being shown to you in SuperOffice version 10 online on SaaS. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the selections options, go through the background selections and what you use them for, and which parts of the system these impact. People who've been using SuperOffice for years will notice a difference in the new selections. And if I can, I'll give you an overview and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of a steer on how to use it. So what are selections? Selections are the ability to get data, both static and dynamic, and I'll explain that in a moment, from within SuperOffice, and to be able to use that data, whether it be to do mail shots, to do reports, to capture data and export it into Excel for maybe management reports. They're a very, very powerful tool, a very, very powerful part of SuperOffice, and allow us to bring data together very easily. One of the things to draw your attention to with selections is when you create selections, always remember that you have the star, which will allow you to favorite specific selections that you've put together that you want to be reminded of. If you do star a selection, when you go into the selections option, clicking on the star will list all the selections that you've favorited. It's a really useful function that not many people use or are not aware of. So I'm going to create a brand new selection. And as I go through, I'm going to explain some things to you. So by selecting new and selection, the first thing I'm offered is where do I want to do the selection from? What's the data that I want to use to get my selection together? This is really important, and you can make a mess of this. It doesn't matter. You just delete the selection. But if I want to find people, then I'm going to select here, find contacts. If I want to find requests that have been raised in the system, then I'm going to use it here, requests. If I want to find chat conversations, again, I'm going to use here. The end result of all of these finds will be the data that the heading is referencing. I can even find selections, so other selections that I've created. So what we'll do to start off with is just use a simple find company. Before I do that, just draw your attention to the typical ones here. These are the ones that have been put together by the development team in SuperOffice as typical selections that people want to make. One thing that is worth noting at this point is that selections can be used to power dashboards. So you can actually get data together, show it graphically, and then decide to show that as a dashboard in either your SuperOffice, the company's SuperOffice, or a certain team's SuperOffice under the dashboard function. For my particular one, I'm just going to use a very simple find company. Now there's a criteria already here. I'm going to clear that out so we can start again. The criteria will always remember the last criteria that you used. One thing that's worth drawing your attention to very early on here is all selections have always been based on AND. This is basic Boolean logic. So there's an AND statement at the end. With SuperOffice 10, we now have the ability to add OR. So this is allowing me to look for something or something else. This particular example, if you look at company name and I was to select the letter A, so all companies starting with A, notice the AND, that doesn't change at this level, that's fixed, and I might look for a specific company with a category. So let's say customer. That is now an AND statement. So it's looking for the company name starts with A and a category which is customer. I now have the ability to also say OR. So I might look for companies that start with a B. This is a very simple example. And they're not customers, they're partners. So now I have two sets of data, this and this, or this and this, that will be returned into my search. And we can see the results of that very quickly by just looking at the results. There we go. So I'll just go back to criteria for a moment. So we have the ability and we have the ability for or. I'm going to remove these for now and just go back to the basic and. When you're doing selections, they take time. Your selection very rarely is right the first time that you key it in and create it. So what you want to be able to do very quickly is to put your criteria in, flick to results and see what the outcome is. Flick back to criteria, maybe by adding another field. So notice now if I go to add, I can now add fields from anywhere in the system. I might go down to company level again. And in this particular one, I am going to look for the on stop flag is no. Then again, pressing results allows me to quickly see the output of the criteria that I've specified. I might want to display some different data here. Using the cog in the right-hand side, you have to have permission to do this in the user rights. I'm in a position where I can now bring data and show data in the columns. So I'm going to show the company, and I've just said to select on the on stop flag. So I'm going to find that now. There. And I'm going to show it. Notice the stop flag is now shown at the end. Using this cog is now very powerful. We won't cover this today, but the grouping and filtering and now allows for a lot more versatility in the output. That's one for another Friday. So now I've got my results. I can swap back into to criteria and results as many times as I want. Seeing an example then in results of the data that's returned. Only when I'm happy with the selection would I then select Save as a selection. Just for those eagle-eyed users, this is the same as me pressing Find. That just takes me to the results. Pressing Save as a selection now allows me to create a save of this selection, which can be used by me, my team, or the whole business. This is really important to understand this. What's the difference then between the dynamic selection and the static selection? Again, for the eagle-eyed ones who are used to version 6, 7, 8, you'll have noticed combined as missing now from this save screen for the type of selection. You can still do combine, but it's not done at this level. So a dynamic selection is allowing the system to be told that every time I bring this selection up, run the criteria that I've specified and give me a list of the results. Data, we know in business, is a very dynamic thing. It's always changing. So a dynamic selection is always picking the latest data. It's bringing the latest information through onto your screen for you to do something with. For some marketeers, dynamic selections can be painful because you could do a dynamic selection today, do an action from that dynamic selection, but then tomorrow the dynamic selection changes. So it's really important that we have another option there, which is static. Now, I would never start with a static selection. It's personal choice to everybody. I would always start with a dynamic selection to allow me to keep changing the criteria, getting my results, looking at it with my colleagues. I would then change the dynamic selection to be static. So I'd set it in stone before I did something with it. And a great example of this is a mail shot. If I leave my selection as dynamic for a mail shot, I could do a mail shot today to 100 people, but tomorrow that list is 99. I don't know where the one is that's disappeared because it's dynamic. If I'd made that list static before doing the mail shot, so fixing it at 100, I am using that static data to then undertake my tasks. So that's a far better way of doing it to have clarity. We do have a third option on this screen, which is add to an existing static selection. You can't add to a dynamic because, of course, by default, it changes. But I could do another selection and add it to a selection I created earlier that is static. So for the purpose of Find Out More Friday, I'm going to keep that as dynamic. This now gives me the opportunity to give it a name. I always teach people using SuperOffice to start selections with their name, hyphen, and then be descriptive. A list of companies not on stop. I'm the owner. We can make anybody else the owner that we want to. We can make it visible just to me, to my team, to another team, or to the whole business. I'm going to make this available to all. We have the description box. This is a description of the selection. Some people put the criteria in here for clarity. Okay, then we selected earlier, it was dynamic, and we'll leave it as dynamic, but this is where we could change it to static at any point. And we can put it into a category. So this is a campaign. Save. Only when I've saved the data does my screen change, and that doesn't matter whether it's dynamic or static. So I now see the company in contact first. I see my criteria. I see the details I entered. And now I see the ability to produce charts. These are charts that can be used individually outside of the dashboard and can also be used in the dashboard. I also see mailings. So directly from within the selection, I can start to create a mailing, whether that's an e-shot, a traditional printed snail mail. It doesn't really matter. This is where I can start to actually use that selection. I also, if I've got the rights, and this is a user add rights function, have the ability to export, to take the data out. Please be aware it only exports the fields which are shown. So if you want extra data that's not here, you need to use that cog to add additional fields in. Let me also bring your attention to the task button at the bottom left-hand side. The task button, very similar to the mailings tab, but now with greater functionality, allows me to create an emailing, to create an SMS mailing, so simple message service, so text message, to create a document mailing that can then be printed. All mailings are created into PDF format, merging into whatever your templates are, and then printed directly to printer. Send an individual email, generate follow-ups. So if I've sent something out, of course, we want an action to do something with it. Why would we send something out with no action? I can also, from selections, undertake bulk updates. Copy the selection. So make a photocopy of the selection. Copy the selection into a selection. So you can take several selections and copy them together. Add to a project. Combine. This is where we see the introduction of the combine function. Combine, we can cover that in another Find Out Friday, if that's of interest to people, which allows me to take multiple selections and find the common elements or the non-common elements of those selections combined together. We also have the ability to print labels, print reports, export to Excel, and export to a file. We also have the ability then to delete the selection, delete all the contacts, and delete all the companies and contacts. Those two, of course, being very dangerous.